Next news. Breaking news from the White House.
Breaking right now, the first White House press briefing since the Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt stepped away ahead of welcoming her next child did not feature a backup staffer, a junior deputy, or some nameless substitute. The Trump White House sent Secretary of State Marco Rubio straight to the podium. That alone tells you the administration wanted to send a message of strength, and Rubio did not waste a second. He came out swinging on Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, on the nuclear threat, and what happens when a rogue regime dares to test President Donald Trump. So why did the administration elevate this briefing into a global warning shot? Well, this matters to every American watching because the Strait of Hormuz is not some distant map point you can't ignore. A huge share of global oil, fuel, and commercial shipping moves through that waterway. If Iran gets away with threatening an international route like it's a private toll booth, you feel it at the gas pump, in shipping prices, and food costs, and across the entire economy. And Rubio made clear this is bigger than cargo. Nearly 23,000 civilians from 87 countries have been stranded in the Gulf for more than 2 months, left exposed by Iranian piracy and intimidation. That's not diplomacy. That is hostage-style coercion on the open sea. Politically, the contrast couldn't be clearer. Under President Trump, America does not mumble, stall, or send mixed signals. The Trump administration is projecting order, power, and consequences. While the media class obsesses over process, this White House is showing the world that when the stakes rise, America First leadership rises with them. Now, before we go further, there's another major America First development tonight that fits this story perfectly. This breaking news from the White House: they just announced over $30 billion to secure America's critical mineral supplies and named a specific Alaskan project as a key strategic asset for U.S. mineral independence. Now, I've been to the Vizsla copper drilling site in Canada myself. I've seen it with my own eyes. But what's happening right now in Alaska is bigger than most people realize. President Trump just unveiled Project Vault, a $12 billion strategic mineral reserve designed to stockpile essential resources and keep America strong, secure, and independent from hostile regimes. That's why investors are watching Vizsla Copper so closely right now. Now pay attention, because the company trades in the United States under VCUFF and in Canada as VCU.V. If you want the full story on this strategic push and why it matters right now, check the exclusive briefing. It's only for Next News viewers. It's linked below. And that same doctrine of American strength is exactly what Rubio brought to the White House podium today. Yes, here's the part the corporate press will, of course, try to blur. Rubio said this operation is not offensive, it's defensive, and that matters. You see, the United States is not trying to normalize chaos, start a war for sport, or hand Tehran a propaganda win. The mission is to protect shipping, rescue stranded civilians, and stop Iran from turning an international waterway into a weapon. But Rubio also made one thing clear: if Iran fires first, America will answer. And under Trump, that answer will not be timid. Now, of course, this post from a couple weeks ago that Karoline Leavitt scheduled to have her second child next week, a baby girl, returning to the podium after maternity leave. So it's now official. She's out on maternity leave, and just on cue, we have Marco Rubio stepping up to the podium to fill her pumps. Karoline Leavitt stepping away, and the White House says the podium will stay active. Now we have this. All eyes on the world on the press briefing room. Look at this coverage. It's like wall to wall, everyone in the world paying attention. Every single major outlet carrying this historic press briefing as Karoline Leavitt steps away for a moment. So all eyes are locked on the briefing room. Rubio walking in, setting the tone. Now here he is hammering Iran over its threat to shut down the strait and make the world pay. Here's the secretary in his first moment filling in for Karoline Leavitt.
Why do we have a blockade? We have a blockade because they shut down the straits. So I don't know which members of Congress you're talking to, but here's what I would ask them. I would ask everybody here. It's very simple. These guys have shut down the Straits of Hormuz. This is what Iran is saying. We will shut down the straits. No one can go through. No country in the world can go through unless we allow you to go through, and you have to pay us. But our ships can go through, meaning the Iranian ships, as much as they want. That's crazy. Who would agree to that? So how are we going to have a situation where they get to close the straits to everybody, and the only people who are allowed to go through there 100% without paying anything are the Iranians? If you do that, they'll keep the straits closed forever. They're trying to make this some new normal. Okay, under no circumstances can we ever allow them to normalize the fact that they get to blow up commercial ships and put mines in the water. So the response to that is we're going to blockade your ships. If everyone's ships are not getting out, your ships are not getting out either. That's not an act of war. That's a defensive measure. It's a counter to what they have decided to do. You know what is an act of war? Putting mines in the water. Why don't the members of Congress, whoever it is complaining about it, they should be all over that. These guys put mines in the water. That alone, mining in the water is illegal, period, under any circumstances, and they've done it. But this is crazy stuff, but this is what they've done.
So that's the opening shot, making the case that Iran's blockade racket is insane and indefensible. Next, he goes straight at the regime's nuclear lies, says they've never meant a word of their denials.
They have always said they don't want a nuclear weapon. That's because they've always said that. They just don't mean it. And why do you say, well, how do you know they don't mean it? Well, we don't mean it because they're doing all the things, and historically have tried to do all the things that you do if you want a nuclear weapons program. For example, they innovate and try to innovate long-range delivery missiles that now, in some cases, are capable of reaching much of Europe. They build these large underground centrifuges for enrichment activity. There are countries in the world that are involved in the enrichment business, but these guys do it in mountains and in caves and in hiding. They've always had secret components of their nuclear program undisclosed to the world. And we know for a fact that they retain highly enriched uranium at 60%, that they did so. And that has no civilian use, none, zero whatsoever. So they have an opportunity here to agree to something that will make it clear that they're not interested in a nuclear. One thing is to say we don't want a nuclear weapon. Another thing is to do the things that prove you don't want a nuclear weapon. By the way, if what Iran wants is a civilian nuclear program for power plants and stuff like that, there are a lot of countries in the world that have that, and they don't enrich. They import the enriched material. You know, they could have that if that's what they wanted, but they're not acting like that's what they wanted. They're acting like they want a military, nuclear program. That's unacceptable. So that's the process we're engaged in now. To create, that's the object of this diplomacy, is to come up with some level of understanding about what are the topics that they've agreed to negotiate on. We don't have to have the actual agreement written out, and one day this is highly complex and highly technical. But we have to have a diplomatic solution that is very clear about the topics that they are willing to negotiate on and the extent and the concessions they're willing to make at the front end in order to make those talks worthwhile. That's what Stephen Jarrett and the whole team is working on, and I hope to have good news on it. That's the outcome we would prefer. That's the outcome we would have preferred a year ago. That's the outcome I think most of us would have preferred a long time ago. But that's not the option they've given us, given their activity.
And he didn't finish yet. After calling out Tehran's fake civilian nuclear talking points, Rubio turns to pressure that actually hurts. Here he lays out how sanctions in the blockade are crushing the regime's economy day by day.
Now, while this project steadily progresses, Operation Economic Fury, continues to impose maximum pressure on the Iranian regime and what remains of their already frail economy. Today, inflation in Iran is 70%, and their currency is in total and complete freefall. U.S. sanctions enforcement is stepping up. It's moving in lockstep with the naval blockade to degrade Iran's capacity to generate, to move, and repatriate revenue. It directly targets the regime's primary revenue lifelines. The blockade alone is costing Iran as much as $500 million a day in lost revenue. 90% of total Iranian trade has been halted, causing permanent damage to Iran's oil infrastructure as wells are forced to shut in. Again, all of this is in response to their piracy. Okay, it cannot be that you have these straits and they blow up any ship that moves, and the only ships that get to go through are theirs. You can't have a situation in which the straits are closed to everyone else, but they benefit from the piracy. That can't happen. That's why the blockade is in place, and that's why these sanctions are crippling them. Any foreign financial, and by the way, Treasury is now identifying and cutting off every dollar of revenue that's flowing to this regime. And so, look, any foreign financial institution or commercial actor that enables Iran's sanctions evasion is going to face secondary sanctions exposure and a loss of access to the U.S. financial system. Wow. As President Trump has said, and the facts clearly bear out, the United States of America holds all the cards. There is no scenario here in which if they decide to join a ladder of escalation, they wind up getting the last say. But our preference is for these straits to be opened to the way they're supposed to be opened, back to the way it was. Anyone can use it, no mines in the water, nobody paying tolls. That's what we have to get back to, and that's the goal here. Every day the conflict continues, however, our leverage on Iran will continue to increase, and their position will continue to weaken, especially as the blockade really begins to bite in conjunction with the sanctions.
He says the squeeze is working. America's leverage keeps growing. Next, he delivers the warning to Iran. Really won't want to hear, do not test President Trump.
The last point I would make, and it really is important for them to understand this, is they really shouldn't test the will of the United States, at least not under President Donald Trump. He has proven time and again that he will back up what he says. And if they test him, ultimately they will lose. The hard way, the easy way, the long way, the short way, they will lose.
They're going to lose every which way. Plain English, under Trump, Iran loses if it pushes its luck. Now Rubio takes apart the media's favorite dodge and says there's no international law that excuses mining a global waterway.
Just about the importance of the Straits for a moment. This is approximately a quarter of the world's oil trade, along with significant volumes of fuel and fertilizer that operate through the Straits of Hormuz. The Iranian regime cannot be allowed to dictate who uses this vital waterway. I don't think this is also being reported enough. Maybe you are reporting. I don't read everyone. I don't know many damn outlets here. I don't know who you all are, but I mean, I know who some of you are, but I don't know all of you are. But I will say this about it. This is an international waterway. Okay, this is an international waterway. And international law is very clear, and I love it because everybody always talks about international law, and this international law on this is very clear. International waterways, no country can control them. There is no international law that allows you to say, I'm going to put mines in an international body of water and I'm going to blow up ships that don't listen to us and try to go through. That's what Iran is doing. This is a criminal act. And someone needs to do something about it. Something needs to be done. It's completely illegal, completely illegitimate, and completely unacceptable. And that's why the United States military is guiding stranded commercial ships safely through the strait and is working to restore freedom of navigation and putting an end to these efforts to hold the global economy hostage. So far, as a proof of concept and as a proof of function, 2 U.S. flag merchant ships have successfully transferred the Strait of Hormuz in the first stages of this project, and they're now safely on their way. The U.S. military is deploying the necessary assets to extend this defensive umbrella over commercial shipping. But there should be no mistake. And as I said this already, this is a defensive operation. I want to reiterate that point. This is important to understand. If no shots are fired at these ships and no shots are fired at us, we're not firing shots. But if we're fired on, we will respond, and we will respond with lethal efficiency.
You know, as I'm watching this, I'm going, that guy is going to be the next president. That's what I'm seeing right there. I don't know what you guys think, but I can see it already. Like it or not. Rubio just blew up the fiction that Iran can terrorize an international shipping lane and hide behind legal jargon. Next, he draws the line on how the U.S. responds. Defensive only unless Iran fires first.
Now, what's really important for you to report and for everyone to understand is this is not an offensive operation. This is a defensive operation. And what that means is very simple. There's no shooting unless we're shot at first. Okay? We're not attacking them. But if they're attacking us or they're attacking a ship, you need to respond to that. You're not going to let some fast boat come up on the ship and shoot it up. We're going to respond to it, and we've been successful at it. I don't know what the exact number is, but I know a number of those fast boats have now been targeted, and will continue to be if they pose a threat to our forces. We'll shoot down drones, we'll shoot down missiles, but it's defensive in nature. This is defensive. So if you hear stories about attacks and launching of firing back and forth, it's not back and forth. We are only responding if attacked first. This is a defensive operation, and that's what's occurring here.
Defensive operation, making it absolutely clear. He explains who's trapped in the Middle East piracy. The scale gets real. Nearly 23,000 civilians from 87 countries need rescue.
As you know, over the weekend, the president announced this Project Freedom. And the goal of it is to, frankly, if you want to talk about it, it's to rescue like almost 23,000 civilians from 87 different countries that are trapped inside of the Gulf and left for dead in the Persian Gulf by this Iranian regime. You know, for more than 2 months now, these innocent sailors and commercial crew members have been stranded out at sea because Iran is conducting something that's not just criminal. It's criminal for sure, but it's desperate and destructive, this blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. Nations from around the world, the overwhelming majority of whom are not even engaged in any military hostilities, are now at risk not just of losing their cargo, but the lives of their own citizens because of this blockade. These ships, you know, you don't leave a ship out there for this long. You start running out of food. You start running out of potable water, essential supplies, and they're at the mercy of this piracy. And what it is, it's piracy. And not only that, but some of them have seen, you know, been opened fire on and rained down senseless attacks on several civilian ships already. So frankly, the way to put it, these are innocent bystanders. These are countries that, and ships and so forth that have nothing to do with any of this, and nonetheless are being caught in the middle of it and being held hostage merely because Iran could do that, just because of, just as the regime brutally slaughtered tens of thousands of their own citizens for the crime of peaceful protest, because they're unhappy with the quality of life or the lack of quality of life in Iran today. And so they're sitting ducks. They're isolated, they're starving, they're vulnerable. And at least 10 sailors have already died as a result of the civilian sailors. So already many nations privately and some publicly have asked the United States to help free their ships and to restore freedom of navigation in the Straits of Hormuz and this critical artery of global trade. And so President Trump, as he always does, stepped up and answered the calls for their help. And he's directed the United States military to guide these stranded ships to safety, to provide a protective bubble under which they can operate and move product and get themselves out of there and out of harm's way. And this is the first step towards reopening the strait and bringing this regime's last-ditch act of economic arson, bringing that to a close. We're doing it not only because we were asked, but because we're the only ones who can. We have the power to sort of take the steps that we've taken now. Under this president, under President Trump, the United States will help our friends. We're going to stand up to rogue regimes like the one in Tehran, and we're going to be unashamed to use our power and our abilities to project military power in the service of our national interest above all else.
So Rubio turning the briefing into a full case against the Iranian regime and in defense of American power. Fox sums up how he handled Leavitt's podium job with the pressure, the jokes, and the chaos, the many roles of Rubio. Secretary of State Marco Rubio shakes up the briefing room as he fills in for Karoline Leavitt while she's out on maternity leave. Rubio poked fun at reporters, but also admitted he was a bit overwhelmed. Some standout lines from his debut show the pressure of hosting a White House press briefing. They get 2 questions for these. You can ask me 2 questions, I'll give you 1 answer. This is chaos. I wish I had a dice. Did I call on you already? I need to get a laser pointer. You're not ready for my DJ meme. And there he is, poking his head out, getting ready to fill Karoline Leavitt's pumps. So this is the real takeaway. The first post-Leavitt briefing was not just a personnel change, it was a doctrine reveal. Leavitt steps out for maternity leave, and instead of downgrading the message, the Trump administration upgrades the messenger. Rubio used the podium to lay out the full case. Iran is laying out its nuclear ambitions, mining and threatening international waters, trapping civilians, and trying to extort the world through the Strait of Hormuz. America, by contrast, is acting lawfully, defensively, and from a position of overwhelming leverage. Economic fury is hammering the regime. Project Freedom is exposing the humanitarian cost, and Trump's credibility is doing the rest. That's what real deterrence looks like. Not speeches, not begging power backed by a president who means what he says. So let's sum it up. Karoline Leavitt prepares to welcome her baby girl, and the White House makes a statement by putting Marco Rubio at the podium. The world watches, and the message is unmistakable. Under President Donald Trump, America is back in command. Iran does not get to choke off a global waterway, lie about nuclear weapons, strand civilians, and expect weakness from Washington. Those days are over. If you believe this is what strong leadership looks like, share this report right now and drop your thoughts below. Yes or no, do you trust President Trump to handle Iran from a position of strength? Make your voice heard in the comments, and also make sure you do this. Join the hundreds of patriots now who have joined this number. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. That's our secret number we've set up so you can beat the algorithm and get direct alerts sent straight to your phone from me when it matters most. And check out the Next News merch shelf below this video. Stay loud, stay proud, and keep standing for an America that leads from strength.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now. You know out.